we go back because a lot of people don't know this, but we worked together at Church of the King for a while. Like it was like what, 4 or 5 years?
At least 3 where I worked, but I volunteered for a couple of years.
You were voluntold.
I mean, a little bit.
See, you were smart though. You didn't work for free for like 4 years before you were you.
I got kids.
I was a big kid. They took advantage. It's typical ministry. Like, man, this guy has a lot of dreams, a lot of passion, but he can't get his crap together. We at least get 3 years out of him. You were counseling at the church, and you were handling like connections and a lot of other stuff. And so, what's going to be fun about our conversation is that when we talk about like success and how we define success, what an evolving target. Because if you would ask me like 5 years ago, I would have been like, I mean, I was so sold out to the organization. I would have said the day that we break 1,000 people and 15 people give their lives to Christ on a Sunday morning. And they'd be like, what about like life goals? Like, I don't care about life goals. Just trying to get through this Sunday. Right. Versus now, if you'd ask me, it would have nothing to do with a core organization. It's like overarching people, life goals. Like, so we evolve. You've done the same thing. So tell me and tell everybody a little bit about yourself so they know. Because we have the cameras on, but most people listen via audio, so they can't actually see you.
Oh, okay.
And you don't age. That's the other thing that's unfair.
Black don't crack.
I did not say that.
I mean, we all know it's true.
Because you're what ethnicity are you? I know. I remember. I just don't want to shoot wrong. Is it? Wait, half Dominican? No,
I'm essentially like, if you have to call, like, I'm black Creole, but if you look at my like ancestry DNA or my 23andMe, there's several African countries, several European countries, native indigenous people. There's a little bit of Asian thrown in for a little flavor.
What the?
There's a little bit of everything.
I just wish we were going to talk about one of your family reunions and what that looks like. Because if people see a picture of your family, it is it's the cool. We're going to move this a little.
Oh, thank you.
I want to make sure people hear you.
Okay.
And I just remember we would sit and we were in the van that one time and we were talking about how your half sister met a brother that you didn't know y'all had. And
they emailed me. So this was last
some
January.
Random white guy in Jennings or something.
Yeah, he grew up in Benton and he did not know that he was half black. He grew up thinking that he was a white guy from Benton.
But he had rhythm. You told me they saw him dance or something, and they go, he's got some of us in there.
Like a little curly hair, a little something. And dad has very fair skin and blue eyes. So my dad has very European features, even though he's considered black.
It's so funny.
And so, I got a Facebook message in January of 2021 saying, hey, my husband doesn't know who his dad is, but you showed up as a relative on Ancestry. I mean, not Ancestry, 23andMe. And I said, I'll go check my account. And it turns out he was my half brother. Yes. So our family tree is.
It's got a lot of.
It was kind of like a Lifetime movie because it was like, oh, my brother.
Apples on one side, lemons on the other. It's got different.
A little bit of different. Fruit. What are those things? Those
some spices.
Spices. Those little fruit hybrids. Like the tree has all of it.
Some with seeds, some without. I mean, it's fire. I think that's great though. Is we used to have a lot of conversations, and we'll get into the whole like how do we define success and stuff, but. I just think you and me are both extremely driven. We've always been like crazy busy.
Yes.
Sometimes more obsessed with helping others and helping ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's like a bad habit. And so I was just excited to actually get to sit down and have a conversation with you.
No, it's
without being like, I gotta
go. Sorry, I gotta go pick up kids. And I was thinking about even what you just said about how when you're working for an organization, how your definition of success changes. And I think some of that comes with like emotional and spiritual maturity too, because you move from working to get others' approval to working for a purpose that is based on what you and God have decided.
Okay. Whoa. All right. We're going to church. Okay. So let's run that back because I have a feeling success today is going to be defined by understanding your purpose and not relying on the validation of those around you.
Yeah.
Like what you accomplish and understanding that it is what you were designed for should be your definition of success, versus the pat on the back or the, you're doing a good job.
Right. But so many times when we're still dealing with our stuff emotionally, which has a lot of things to connect to, like our childhood and our trauma and our attachment, that's how we define success, by getting that acceptance, by getting that pat on the back, by getting someone saying, oh, yes, you did this well, which equates to you're good, because maybe we don't believe we're good enough. But once we start to believe we're good enough, success changes to, all right, I already know I'm good enough, so I don't need the pat on the back, but what would I like to contribute?
Yeah, I think that would have, if I would have understood so that way earlier, I made it along. I would joke that 99 out of 100 people would have quit ministry way before I was half asked to quit. I was like, I could just admit it. I mean, I was let go because I was terrible at the job that I was prescribed to do. And it was outside of my calling. It was not aligned with who I was, or we were way, way, way misaligned. But since I wasn't getting validation, I felt like I couldn't show up 100%, but it's really, really unhealthy. My validation should have been coming from God and my family.
Not even your family, from yourself.
Oh, okay. So I got to work on that. You're going to have to counsel. So you're going to end up counseling me and my audience today. So what if someone is, because you're on a good point there. So like me, I always kind of struggle with like just a basic understanding of my self-worth. Like my self-worth is usually attached to, that's why I'm natural in sales and build organizations so well, is because whenever they're like, holy cow, you thought of something none of us could have thought of. You did really good. Well, when I don't have that, I don't like wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm good today. I'm like, where can I go find validation today? And I think a lot of people struggle with that. So like, I don't know, how would you, if someone like me is sitting across from you and says that, what would you say to them?
One, let's normalize it, because I think that's a very common struggle. And I think sometimes when we think that struggle is just us, we think something's wrong with us intrinsically, right?
I can say that, yes, that's what we think.
Right. But
here's the people in the audience on the other side of the camera.
We all think it.
There's a bunch of people driving their car right now going, uh-oh, crap, talking to me.
Pull over if you're crying. It's all right. It's all right. Let it go. Let it go. But I think it's part of what I call the 5 big lies, right? Okay. So number 1 being, I'm not good enough, right?
Got it.
2 being, there is not enough. There's not enough resources. There's not enough love. There's not enough.
It's business owners. Some of us, we have this bad habit. We got to,
we have to hold on to everything, right? Like there's not enough.
It makes you bitter and cold because like you actually get exhausted. I try to tell people there's plenty fish in the sea.
There's enough for everybody.
There's enough for everybody.
Right? But that even comes into place on a societal level. Like when you talk about things like racism, right? It's because we want to protect those resources. We want to protect those things that we think are ours. So if we can keep other people separate and we think that there's not enough, we have to sort of hoard that. We have to protect that, right?
Well, there wouldn't, I mean, if scarcity mindset and fear didn't work, we wouldn't even have news channels.
Right.
I mean, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on or what side you vote on. The tactic is divide and conquer.
Exactly.
Because if you're on TikTok, you notice I see a lot of educated, uneducated, happy, mad, doesn't matter, having dialogue.
Yes.
And you see their overall demeanor and their love just like rise across all races, all backgrounds. You've got like a rapper and a skateboarder and a businessman and all color businessmen, businesswomen, all these people having a conversation and being like, well, I didn't know you thought that way. Why do you think that way? I didn't know that hurt your feelings. Have you thought of it this way?
Yes.
I didn't know you thought of it that way.
Right.
And you see the rise in just people's character. And
that's when we open up to realize, wait, there is enough. And it's funny because I was listening to this priest, Father Richard Rohr, and he was doing a sermon. And he brought up something that I thought, oh my goodness, this blows my mind. Because I'm independent. I'm not liberal or conservative. I just kind of go. But he said, liberals tend to operate out of anger and conservatives tend to operate out of fear. And I thought, oh, kind of a good point. But
yeah.
also, those are the two main things that keep us from being able to be vulnerable and reach across the aisle, because the fear is there's not enough, right? And the fear is that we are not enough. So whatever we have, we can't be vulnerable, which is another lie. I can't be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And we have to protect that and protect ourselves, because if I'm not right, then what am I? Because that's where my value is.
Yeah.
So if I'm not right, what does that mean?
Okay, so now we don't. It's you and me. Like, not everybody is as comfortable as we are. Like, we could deep dive politics. Yeah. We could disagree for an hour and still be best friends. Right. Like, that's because that's how it's supposed to be.
Because we don't have to agree. I don't have to be right, and I don't need you to think I'm right.
Okay, so you and me, I learned more working with you for 3 years because I would just assume you were so nice. You agreed with everything that came out of my mouth, and then you would be like, "Okay, you actually made some great points. Can I tell you where you could stretch your learning?
Right.
Could I tell you a book you should try to read?" Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, "Well, I thought you agree with me." I said, no, I'm just polite. Like, we would, so,
I'm just listening.
And so I'm like, what the heck? And I think that right now, it might just be how the algorithm is targeting me, but I see a lot of very frustrated, very loud, very angry liberal voices. And then on the other side, I see a lot of younger conservative voices saying, well, no, even if I disagree with you, like, vulnerability in discourse we all rise together by learning our weaknesses, by learning your differences and having conversation. And me, I'm obsessed with that. Like, that's my favorite thing to watch. And I literally don't care how the person votes, what organization they're involved with. I don't care if I disagree with them from 1 second to the 10-minute mark. Mm-hmm. That, like, no. I'm going to disagree, and you may hurt me and I may hurt you, but we're going to grow together. But I've noticed if you turn TikTok off, we don't do that in person a lot, and we definitely don't do it with ourselves.
No.
And so that's my whole point I was getting to is I can get all excited. You see how excited I get to be like, I noticed this in the movement. I noticed, and nobody needs to know I'm like, centric leaning conservative is how I would describe myself. Not leaning too far. Well, screw it. I can lean as far as I want. It doesn't matter. That's the other thing. I shouldn't have to defend that.
Right.
But you see how I, like, get excited to talk about someone else instead of my own problem? We do that. And so there you go. It's okay to be vulnerable. Is you don't need necessarily a safe space to, like, your shortcomings and your hurts and your past and your feelings and all those things. Like, it's okay to express those and talk about them.
Right.
Right?
Well, and I think, okay, you brought up a point, like, it's okay for me to hurt you and you hurt me. But I think part of that is it's not okay to hurt each other.
No.
It's okay to express our opinions and to kind of slush through what that means. And I think especially as people of faith, because I think that we have very much politicized our faith, and faith exists outside of that.
100%.
But what we do in response to our faith makes a difference. So if you think about people that are considered liberal and think, well, there's so much anger. Well, in counseling, what I tell people is that anger is a secondary emotion. Usually, anger is safer to express than the pain. And so what usually underlies anger is pain, frustration, confusion. And so if you take that, when you look throughout history, when people from all over the world have, responded in anger, a lot of times it's because they have felt frustrated, they felt hurt, things like that. So when that comes to the forefront, when we have these discussions, I think it's about coming from a place of vulnerability and empathy and realizing that even if we don't agree, I don't need to convert you to feel okay. Like, if I'm arguing with you and you're like, well, I just don't agree, I'm like, that's okay. I don't require you to agree.
Okay. So we talked about this in the last episode, that they have proven, Daniel Pink, it's one of his books. They actually had neuroscientists hook up people's brains, and they proved that the reason why news stations are always going to be successful, and one of the reasons why people tend to post volatile, explosive things, or very polarizing things on social media. They actually prove that posting something extremely volatile and polarizing our amygdala needs to feel like we are in a tribe, and it represents like archaic safety, like the caveman in
like,
our
I'm
DNA.
not alone.
I'm not alone. It has a higher dopamine and serotonin response than taking actual antidepressants.
Oh yeah. Well, think about it. When you've gotten into little Facebook battles with people, right? Like when you have people come on and kind of co-sign with what you have to say, it feels good.
Yeah.
It's not like
I didn't know it felt good, like neurologically. I didn't know it was actually doing something. I heard that on the podcast and I'm like, oh God, no wonder we always want the craziest of you either have, conservative Karen or a liberal. It's always
liberal Lucy.
Conservative Karen, liberal Lucy. And I'd love for them to stop screaming and have a conversation. We probably learn a lot from each other. And that's why we do that, though. I have noticed in life, somebody said this day, and it kicked my butt. They said, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm sorry if this is a little bit inappropriate, but they said that continually talking about your dreams without waking up and developing a real plan or course of action is mental masturbation.
I mean,
I was like,
kind of facts.
And I said, oh my God. And it's a Wealth, or one of the accounts that I follow. And I shared it on my stories because
because it said mental masturbation.
Yes. Like that's like, we don't have bigger fish to fry. Inappropriate. But I sat there and I was like, what the heck? That's actually so true.
Yeah.
So, okay. Step number 3 was it's okay to be vulnerable. That wasn't an excuse. We brought up political discourse. And I said, it's okay if we hurt each other. I'm going to rephrase that. It's okay to not walk in a fence and not be so offended and not be overly safe and be open to differences. Yeah. And if someone doesn't come to your side of the aisle or someone doesn't agree, do not let it, it's not part of your self-worth.
Right. And I would say, like, use your offense as sort of like an indicator, right? So if we're driving in our car and we have a light that comes on, it's an indicator, right? So I say use your feelings as indicators that there may be something to explore. So if you're feeling offended, it's worth checking into that to say, well, why do I feel offended?
Yeah.
Sometimes we're offended because someone said something offensive.
Yeah. Sometimes
we're offended because it triggered something in us.
Yeah.
That feels uncomfortable.
Self-reflection.
Right. Self-reflection.
I think Pastor Todd, it was him or somebody else, they said that like your emotions are great information, terrible
dictators.
Terrible, something like that. And no. Said your emotions are a great thermometer, but a terrible thermostat.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang, that's good. Yeah, mic drop.
Yes.
So, because before you have number 4 and number 5, well, Sam, but before we can ever talk about success, I think that one of the things that stops us from, however we gauge success or define it, one of the things that stops us from climbing that ladder is the emotional instability and lack of self-worth. I could tell you from personal experience, I've left an obscene amount of money and so many things on the table that if I would have just woken up and said, God created you for this reason, you will figure out your shortcomings and people will tell you, you will pray through them, but what you brought today is enough. Get to work. Like, go make a difference.
Go do it.
Instead, I'd like, man, what about, and you lose 2 hours and then by Thursday you've lost 8 hours and you think you're terrible, so Friday you don't do anything.
I'm a failure.
And you're like, oh, do this again. Next week will be different. And the next week you're like, I kind of suck. And you do it all over again. And you're like, what are you doing? So we'll talk about that because emotional stability, emotional fortitude, and strength and like self-worth
key
is so important to actually ascending. As Jordan Peterson would say, the social hierarchy is connected to our interior joy and our happiness. It's how we were designed. God made us that way. Or so he says. I agree. Not everybody agrees. Some people agree. That's a whole, whatever. I'm a big Jordan Peterson fan, probably too much. Number 4 is go.
Oh, okay. Let me go through my. So,
number 3 was.
First is I'm not enough. There's not enough. I can't be vulnerable.
Yep.
I can't trust others.
Okay.
Right. And then the 5th is God is not who you think he is. So I link all of that back to this.
That was apparently really good because the fire truck.
It was on fire because the fire trucks were coming.
Yeah.
Number 4 is I can't trust others.
Can't trust others.
And number 5 is God is not who you think he is.
Fire truck pass. You're like, it was on fire.
Yeah.
You're like,
so, okay. I know. So this is all, to me, it links to the story in Genesis of the fall. And that story is, to me, a really good, can't remember if it's a metaphor or an allegory. If you're an English teacher, just correct me. But for what the human experience is, because they're in the garden, right? And Lord's like, hey, you could have any tree, just don't eat this one. And I was reading a study where they said it's not that they couldn't ever have that tree. It's just that they weren't ready for it yet. They had not grown and they weren't mature enough. Not like it was going to be ruled out forever. They just couldn't have it yet. They weren't ready for it.
Well, I never thought of it that way.
Right?
Right?
So,
okay.
Like,
all right.
Okay.
Whoa.
Right? It's already. And so what happens is that they see the tree and the serpent comes and he says, you know what it is that if you eat from that fruit, that tree, you're going to be like God.
Yeah.
And that was already the lie of you're not good enough because they were already like God. They were created in the image of God. They were already like him.
Yeah.
So he was actually like kind of pulling okey doke on them because he was telling them that they weren't who they already were. Right?
That lie, it perpetuates and it affects so many parts of our lives.
Yeah, that's why I think it's such a great story to read because it reflects our experience even now, right? So they already believed, okay, I'm not enough. And there is not enough comes from the fact they had all of these trees in the garden, but for some reason, all of everything that was created was not enough because they could not have this one thing. So it's like, okay, that's not enough. So then they eat from the tree, God starts looking for them, and they hide. Yeah. And they sew fig leaves to cover their nakedness, right? Because they realize that they are naked. To me, the nakedness represents vulnerability. So once their eyes are open, they see each other, they don't trust each other, and they say, I have to cover up because this person has the potential to hurt me.
Yeah.
So they cover up.
Yeah.
So now I can't be vulnerable. I can't trust you. And when God starts to look for them, they're like, what are you doing? They're like, we were scared, so we hid. But God had never given them reason to be afraid.
No.
So God is not who you think he is when you start believing those lies.
Ooh. So and I think we have this little, almost like this little loop of, so it's, I'm not worthy or I'm not good enough. Or right when I start to believe I am, unfortunately, I'm going to have to speak out my shortcomings and ask for help, pray about them, deal with them, overcome them. Like good leaders will be like, great leaders, they'll say, this is my biggest weakness. So I surrounded myself with people who, that takes a lot of vulnerability because you have to start out by saying, hey guys, I'm so bad at this, I need to hire help for it. It's actually really vulnerable. We act like it's this super professional thing, but in the beginning, it takes a ton of emotional strength. Okay, so then we're like, well, maybe I'm not ready to do that. And so I'll try to do it myself. And then we go back and sometimes I think Christians, we do this. And I've done this where you're like, we know God will work out the deeds. Well, if the deeds don't work out in your favor, you're like, you have two choices. Either God's not who he says he is, or I'm not worthy. What do you say first? Well, actually, people take turns. They say both. Sometimes they say both. It's very dark when you say both. And then you go back and you're like, well, I'm not good enough anyway. So what was I thinking? You start, and it's not, you don't lose one rung on the ladder. You'll lose like 10. Like you slide down. You ever slid down a ladder?
Right.
And start.
Yes.
And I think that there's a lot of people that their success is hindered because they're in that broken state. I keep saying it like I'm not I think
universal struggle.
It's a universal struggle. So, and this isn't like a regular self-help. There are practicals. I think I gave some practicals like, what are your weaknesses? Okay, you have to expose and work on them. Like, what is it? Like, you can't just, okay, hey, I'm weak at these things. And now that I remember on maybe the editor will do this. Remember on The Office where he comes out and he says, I declare bankruptcy. You didn't see that?
Wait, which character was that?
Michael. So he says, Michael, you're in such a bad state, you're going to have to declare bankruptcy.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
He goes, that's not how that works, right? He said, I declare bankruptcy. He just yells it. I was freaking dying. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
You can't just say because, oh man, I'm like stealing all your thunder because obviously.
No, go for it.
We do this. I know we do this.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the whole mental masturbation thing.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what you do. Let's say you're not an entrepreneur. Let's say you don't have these big dreams, these big ideals. The other flip side, because I told you, Daniel Pink proved it in his book, is that and I know you know your friends on Facebook, the woe is me. Mm-hmm. This is what's wrong. This is why I'm not good enough. And you post it and you say it and people validate it.
Yeah.
It's like taking a Prozac.
Yeah.
It legitimately is like taking a Prozac.
Yeah. It messes with the same chemicals in your brain. And the thing is, there's two sides of the same coin because both of those sort of are the I am not good enough lie, right? One is saying, oh, I'm not good enough. And I'm going to sort of use this as a manipulation tactic to encourage people to bring me validation because I don't have it in myself.
Because we talk about it. Since we don't have it in ourselves, we're trying to find it.
We're trying to find it in other sources. But from the other side, where it's just that kind of spiral of I'm not good enough, but you're not posting it out there. It's the pride part of it where it's like, I'm not good enough and I can't let them know that I'm not good enough.
That's that unhealthy church. Everything is perfect all the time.
Everything is perfect all the time. And you can't be vulnerable, right? Another of the lies.
Like that jacked us up so much. Like now that I've, in the first time in my life, I'm going through some things that I can't fake it through. Mm-hmm. Like I had months ago, my first ever full-blown anxiety attack and like a mental, emotional breakdown. I didn't realize that there's some people that experience those like once a year, once every 6 months, once every 3 months. I had gone, and since my mom was ill, and when I was like, it had been 15 years. I didn't even know what anxiety felt like because I had gotten so good at faking it and found validation and people being like, as bad as it seems,
it's fine.
You seem like it's all together. So like that was my form of validation. I was like, I can fake it so good that people know it sucks.
Right.
And I'm still happy.
And I'm like, because the Lord's got it.
Yeah.
And it's this thing like, okay, the Lord can still have it and you can still be concerned, right? And it's this idea that if we lack faith, if we can admit things are not okay.
So I think people need to hear that and like really, really, really just dwell on that for a minute because you can say, so let's draw the line. Let's make some practicals because I like when people, I was challenged by someone on social media that if all you ever give are like concepts without guidance, that your value is severely diminished over time. Like you have to be able to be like, no, this is the concept. The simple 3-step process to apply it is blank. So a simple process to apply what we just talked about is imagine if you were vulnerable, know that it doesn't affect your self-worth, but you don't have to be vulnerable for a response. You're vulnerable because exposing your hurts, your pains allows you to grow and other people to speak into your life. But you're not doing it for the Prozac payoff. You're doing it to actually reestablish that you cannot be perfect and still have self-worth, intrinsic self-worth. You cannot be perfect and God still love you.
Yes.
You cannot be perfect and God still use you.
Yes.
Okay, so you cannot be perfect and post all about it for affirmation and validation. No, you can skip that part entirely and share the progress of how God is using you and people are and your get your validation from God and your intrinsic value from yourself, and then be vulnerable for the right reasons. Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit of both, and that's where the theology and psychology kind of marry. Right.
That's what's cool about what you do, by the way. Like people don't realize that you're a counselor, but you understand the biblical foundation of like who we are and how God designed us. And so you're giving people practical reasonings and explanations for what you teach, but you know they're a spiritual being.
Yes.
And like you understand that there's something deeper going on. I think that's just amazing.
Yeah, like they both go hand in hand. It's going to be really hard to grow spiritually if you haven't dealt with your stuff, like your emotional stuff, your trauma, or maybe attachment issues. And it's going to be really hard to grow emotionally if you don't have some sort of connection to something bigger. For us, our faith, we practice Christianity. And for other people, that may be other things, because I don't have just Christian clients, right? Yeah. But I think the two very much are sort of married together. And I think the goal is to develop a sense of self and a sense of your value that's based off of just knowing that you're valued because you are. The moment you breathed air for the first time, you had value because you became an image bearer of God. That is the value. So once you have that sort of intrinsic value, like you said, once that's set, what people say, what people comment, the idea is that it's not going to move you either way. Like if somebody's pumping your head up, this is great, you're like, okay, that's great, but I'm also not perfect. If someone's saying you're the worst person in the world, you're awful, you're like, I have some places to grow, but I'm not terrible.
But I'm still made in the image of God.
I'm still made in the image of God. So it's being able to have that balance and not be thrown into a shame spiral.
A shame spiral, that is good. That is good, because you gotta help your ADHD folk. This whole I don't have it all figured out, so how can I start? And then you make it 3 days later and you're like, you're a piece of crap because you didn't start.
Right.
Oh my God, it's so hard to break. But have you read the In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day?
No, I think you mentioned that to me like a couple of years ago, but I haven't read it yet.
So finally started reading it. It was so popular, it took like 2 months to come in.
Oh my goodness.
Good for him. Mark Batterson, I think. Shout out. You're welcome to share this. I won't be upset. There's this whole story in the Bible about it's like this little hidden nook in the Old Testament. There's a lot of those.
There's a lot of
and you just blew right by it. And it said, what's his name? There's a guy in the Bible, and it says it's just like a little cliff notes. All he did, it says he battled a warrior, 2 warriors that were more adept or larger than him or whatever, and then he battled another man another warrior who had a spear while he had no weapon, and he wrestled it away from him and killed him with it. And then it goes on, and it's like he also a lion fell in this pit, and it said he slipped on the snow and fell into the pit with the lion, and he killed it with his bare hands.
Oh.
So it's like in the Bible. Fast forward, I didn't know this. He became the head of King David's royal guard many years later. So it's all connected, and you just blow by it because we always talk about David.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the passage where they're kind of, I use this term, like talking about all his merry men. Yeah. Because they were telling stories about different people in his little crew.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's just in there. And they're like, this dude's so sick. He freaking killed this dude 2-to-1, ratioed. Didn't matter. Still won. Bigger, taller, stronger guy with a spear. Killed him. Slipped on the snow. Fell down. Killed the lion with his bare hands. Mm-hmm. Well, the whole point of the book is pointing out that, and it's kicking my butt, but for us that are dealing with shame, self-guilt, and lack of self-worth, there is a hard truth on page 2 that the point of the book is when you choose to cower in fear instead of defeating the lions that God gave you plenty of intrinsic value and belief and skill and ability to defeat, not only do you miss out on your purpose, you commit it. Now he takes it far. He said some people can consider it a sin of omission. He goes, because you're choosing not to honor God with the person that he chose to create. So he chose to make you plenty strong enough to defeat that lion, but you have to turn and face it. You can't run. And he said, so when you choose not to defeat the lions in your life, you're dishonoring God by not saying, I was able to defeat this because you made me. I'm so special, and I'm so worthy, and I'm so equipped because the God of the universe chose to piece me together that I can stand up against any lion in my life. And he said, imagine what your life would look like if you not only stood up against the lions and the demons that you fight against, but you did it knowing that you're honoring God's creation by doing it.
Mm.
So he's saying, not only are you really worth something, you're so like, you have so much intrinsic value, and God took the time to weave you and make you that you're supposed to defeat lions, not run from them.
Ooh. But true.
What?
Yeah.
And so I like that he started there in that book, because if you're already struggling with like self-worth, basic habit forming and shame spiral, okay, well, you have two ways when you read that book. You can be like, oh, great. I'm wasting
lions.
God's potential lions. Well, I read that book and I started to think that way, but I was like, wait a second. No. Put your shoulders back. And the reason that you're sitting on this couch in this house with this family in this moment with the lions pacing around and the struggles that you're currently in is because you are equipped to fight them right now. And I don't care if there's snow on the ground. I don't care if it's slippery. I don't care if I have a weapon. I'm going to defeat this because the God of the universe chose to put those tools inside of me, and I'm not going to waste them.
Yeah. And I think...
What?
I mean, boom. But I think a lot of times too, like what you mentioned, the shame, the self-doubt, those are the lions. So when you...
Oh, okay, that's a good point. Yes.
those are the lions.
They don't always have to be external. No. Oh, my
More
goodness.
often, those are the lions. And God both equips us, but he also sends people to help us, like, I don't know, therapists, to help us deal with the lions, because you're not going to tackle the outside lions until you've tackled the inside lions.
Come on, dude. So now we're on, and let's just call out another 800-pound gorilla. Like, it's okay for you to go to therapy.
Oh, my goodness, please do.
Please tell me we're past that stigma. Like,
I wish
we're still not past that stigma.
We're not. No.
Like, it's okay. So I'm about to book. There's this girl that she helps with entrepreneurs dealing with like the insecurity and overwhelm of, like, she helps people deal with the reason why you can't complete anything and you continually stretch yourself so thin is because you don't understand your true value. And so she helps people understand the reason why you're continually stretching yourself so yes, I'm going to book a session with her, and I might book 10 because that's okay. There's nothing wrong with me.
No.
Okay, so we're going to go into because we'll just talk all day.
I mean, we could go all day with that.
We could literally go all day. Last nugget, it regurgitates something that we filmed earlier, and it keeps coming up, is there's a book called Leadership Pain. You remember when they asked us to read that at Church of the King? I think Pastor Stephen Martin asked me to read it. I don't think we read
that. Yeah.
It's a tough one, and I would not recommend it to people who don't understand big dreams, big goals have heavy loads, right? And the core principle of the book, because I bet you there's a reason why it keeps coming up, because I think the people that are influential like you, there are some people that need to hear, hopefully, what I'm about to tell you. Principle of the book is that all these large organizations, you only see the finished version. You don't understand the process. You don't understand the leader, like what they went through, the hell they went through, all these things.
Yes.
And there's so many stories in it. But one of the things that I talk about, and I keep reminding myself, is that now we got lions, we're about to have wolves, and we're going to go full circle, is in the book, his core point is the size of the flock. Because success for some people is influence, climbing the social hierarchy, people knowing who you are and you making a difference in a people group, right? His core principle of the book is the reason why the pastors that you see and the business owners that you see in this world have the size organizations that they have is because God will only allow you to have a flock big enough to where you can still fight off the amount of wolves that would pursue that flock. Larger the flock, the more wolves. You have 1,000 sheep, you're going to draw some wolves. You have 10 sheep, you might get one. Right? So if you want to be in authority or the ability to lead or help 1,000 people, you have to be equipped internally and understand your capabilities to fend off the wolves that come with that much authority. So you're going to have business problems, banking problems,
Absolutely.
friend problems, lawsuits. My God, I still can't talk about it. And
it's traumatic.
One day I'll get to just whatever. All of those things are direct. And so if we don't deal with our internal worth so we go from lions to wolves.
Right.
If we can't deal with the lions and the internal struggles, how are we going to, or is God going to allow us to lead others? Because then now we have to, and you know this, you help people. Most of the things that you talk and help people with, I bet you it's things that you have overcome. It's things that you have seen. It's things that you have gone, I've had that in my life. God, I overcame it this way. Here's the practical tools to do it.
Well, it's more like being able to help someone recognize what their tools are, because we're going to have different tools, right? Because we have different experiences. So I have clients that come in that have had experiences that I've not had, but I understand human patterns of behavior, and there are patterns to everything, right?
Absolutely.
And so there's going to be tools that they need to utilize that I can also utilize just in my different circumstances, but also some different things that they have to address, which is another set of tools. So my job is to help them realize, one, that they have value, right? Two, how to start defeating those lies. And three, to recognize what tools and skills and resources they have already that they can capitalize on to help themselves. Because my job is essentially to put myself out of a job.
In theory, that you would, so you would equip someone with the ability to, take control of their own,
right? To deal with their lies, and to be able to do things like emotionally regulate and process their trauma, so that eventually they could be like, I feel like I can go at this without having to come see you every other week.
That's cool.
And then there's an open door policy, because other things come up. Like, we know, somebody could be just doing fine, and then you get hit by 2 hurricanes within 6 weeks of each other, and
PTSD, no big deal.
PTSD, it's no big deal. So then, there are going to be other things that come up, but part of my job is to teach you or help you look at things from different perspective and teach you skills that I've gone to school to learn, that I've learned from life experiences, so that you can take those and run with them, maybe help somebody else.
I think that's the power of a coach or a therapist. Because y'all are just, when y'all do, you're just super gifted. And Brent, you talked to Brent Woods, and we were supposed to have filmed today, but or tomorrow, but we pushed back. But that's really, really good. I never thought about it. It's not just knowing the answers; it's equipping people with the ability to solve their own problems and re-identify and build. He's talked about helping people in a marriage build a strong foundation. So when the next problem comes up, they don't run back to him. They actually, they're equipped to solve it themselves.
Okay, remember we learned this, and then we learned communication skills, and we learned this, because in reality, I don't really give advice. I sort of point things out, and I explain to my clients there's this type of painting called a pointillist painting. And so the painting is made of a bunch of tiny little dots.
Yeah.
And if you're standing really close to the painting, you just see a bunch of dots.
Yeah.
But if you're standing further back, you can see the bigger
this
picture.
whole thing.
So that's what therapy is. You're so close to the issue, you only see little dots. But I'm removed from it, because I'm not your friend. I'm not your family member. So I'm stepped back, and I can see more of the picture. And so I can say, did you notice there was a tree over there? Did you notice there's some flowers there? Do you notice how maybe this is all connected?
Sometimes we don't realize how blessed we are, by the way. Whenever we, I had to wake up a come to Jesus moment and realize how amazing, that helped. Just someone pointed out, and they're like, you just need to step back and realize that part of the life you have right now, you once would have healed for, you dream of. And so one of the things I think that people should consider doing, yes, they should call a therapist, but if they're not, right now, today, pause, step 10 feet back, imagine your life and your current situation, your current circumstances, your current business, your current job, your current everything. And those circumstances, try a second to step back, like that painting you talked about, and see wait a second, there's a bigger picture here. Maybe I'm hurting or frustrated because there's something occurring over here that I didn't realize. Maybe I could be happier if I recognized how great my family is. Maybe my future in this business is way brighter, but the day-to-day is robbing me of that. Like, just kind of back up.
Like, get perspective. Well, and I think it's a thing too of maybe, you know what? Maybe it is rough. Maybe it is kind of crappy right now. But I think there's also the shift of realizing that, and that's where the intrinsic worth is in how we look at failure. If we're caught in a shame spiral, failure means that there's something wrong with us, right? If we are aware of our intrinsic value, we can have more of a growth mindset where we can look at failure as an opportunity to learn something and to grow in a different way, or be like, okay, well, this didn't work, but maybe I could try something else. So maybe it is bad, but take a step back and realize that failing at something does not mean something is intrinsically wrong with you. It doesn't affect your value.
Use it as a building block to increase like your abilities and
to learn lessons.
It's like as I'm learning, you know, it's tough to admit, but like you start thinking when you're a parent, you think of things considerably different. And like I now know there are things and relationships and stuff that I've gone through that when I get asked by my little girl turned teenager one day, you know, hey, this person said this, what about this? Well, if I had never gone through any struggles or any shortcomings or had a reason to like improve myself or pray harder or ask for help or learn new lessons, what the heck would I teach them? It was like, well, sweetheart, life is all, you know, roses and blossoms. And they're like, no, it's not. I was like, well, what's for me? Maybe you should call a therapist. right? So there's value to, that's a good perspective shift. It's like if you're in the middle of hell, if you believe that you're going to be successful and you're going to be a leader, maybe it's because the guest I just had earlier, Justin Weeks, he said, you know, don't forget the minefield that you navigate, and every mine that you step on means that every person that follows you will never step on it. Like, I was like,
that's so true. Oh my
I
goodness.
never thought of it like that. He said, so if you believe you're a leader and you're walking out first, leader of your family, leader of your business, leader, whatever it is, and you step on those mines, no one's ever going to step on it ever again.
Right.
And he's like, I want you to think about it. It's almost like that is a blessing, especially if you survive.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God. Sometimes it feels like it's going to kill me, but how great is it that my friends, families, the people I coach, the people that you counsel,
they don't have to do it.
They'll never have to do it. It's a good, like a cool way to look at stepping on mines. I'll tell you that.
Well, and sometimes the trials that we go through are the thing that we need to produce a different skill or a different mindset. Because if we never go through anything, how are we going to teach anybody anything? Like I even tell my clients, I said, you know, finding a therapist is like, you know, almost trying on shoes. Like you have to try on different ones because we all have different personalities. We all have different styles.
Yeah. And
so sometimes you have to find the one that matches you.
Yeah.
But the other part is that I say, if your therapist has never been to a therapist, get a new therapist.
Oh, means they've never gone through anything.
I mean, no, it means that they've never confronted anything and done that work.
That's crazy. Okay.
It may be controversial, but that's what I tell my client, because how am I going to say
controversial?
I mean, some people may be like, what do you mean? But I'm thinking, if I have never been to a point where I say, you know, I need to deal with some stuff and gone to get that help and gone to therapy, how am I going to tell you you need therapy?
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't need it, but you need it.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Look, I think it's like the Christians that are too perfect. It's the same thing. It's like this generation, not thank God, but this generation really struggles with the whole, you got to just put it all on and be perfect and show up your Sunday best and everything is all together. When like you're cussing each other out on the way to church. I mean,
right.
You're like, honestly, sweatpants are good enough today.
Right.
Like, I came.
It's like, look, we're here. That's a win.
We're here.
Right. And it's either like the perfection or it's just like, I'm a broken mess. I'm a broken mess and it's a mess and only Jesus can fix it.
And it's like, or you could wake up 30 minutes early tomorrow morning. You could work out for 20 minutes. You could pray for 5 and you could read for 5.
Right. And go to therapy.
Like, the one thing entrepreneurs in this world are doing right is like, get over yourself.
Yes.
Like, I know, like, some of the crap that I've gone through in the past year, I could just go have a little pity party by myself and just whatever I could. But what's the freaking point?
Yeah.
It's like, some of it is, and I'll say this very carefully, some of it is my fault. Like, I put myself in situations I was not equipped for.
Right.
I spoke out of turn. I leapt before I looked. I trusted whenever people who I should have trusted were more discerning and said, you shouldn't trust that person.
Right.
Guess what? I could line it all up. So what is it? Are you going to sit and have a pity party and say, I'm not going to take any risk because I'm not willing to work on myself? Or are you going to sit there and say, it's all my fault, I'm a piece of crap, and still not work on yourself? You still have to work on yourself. You still have to work on yourself.
And even like I'll tell people, like have a little pity party. Nothing wrong with a little pity party. All parties have to end though. Yeah. So have your pity party, have good music, have good snacks, like make it fun, do your thing. Smart colada. What you got to do.
Paradise.
You know.
I knew I had a problem when Paradise knew me by name.
Oh, that's funny.
I was like, well, they spilled a drink on me one day. I was eating spot wings and they accidentally spilled like a whole drink all over me. So they're like, oh, you're the guy who actually spilled the whole drink on. And I was like,
okay, maybe. Yeah.
And so that party, it should have lasted a day. It lasted like a week and a half.
Yeah.
Fair.
So like you have to know when it's time to end the party.
That's good.
And then there was something on, I think it was Facebook I saw one time. And I think about it all the time. It's like, are you going to cry or are you going to boss up? It's like, first of all, I'm going to do both.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to whip your ass. It's going to be fine. And so sometimes you have to do both because, like you said, sometimes our problems are our own fault.
Yeah.
And it's just, but we learn from that. Like, I think even with the nonprofit that I started, like we grew so fast because of the pandemic and people were lonely and people were depressed and people were anxious and everybody wanted counseling. And so we grew so fast that we weren't quite ready for it. Yeah. And so we've had to and then my house, was damaged in a hurricane. And then we had to.
Living in Texas.
We living in Texas and driving back and forth. And I had sort of a similar experience, but with pizza. So I remember coming home because we had to go back and forth. And I was coming back to Beaumont one day. And I remember being close to tears because it was too late to order a pizza. And I was like, oh, okay, this may be a problem. I may be emotionally eating if I'm crying because I can't have pepperoni pizza. Yeah. So it's those things where it just grew so fast. So I had to start the process of let's change our structure. Let's change how we're doing things. Let's make sure I'm doing okay because I can't help other people if I'm still, so me seeing a therapist for a little while and dealing with that. I tell people I go in and out of therapy because, different things come up.
Yeah.
But that's what allows me to be okay to help other people.
100%.
And then we work on our structure and we work on how we do things. And that allowed us to come up with newer ways to do things that are different and maybe, not your average counseling office or counseling session.
Yeah.
So we were able to grow from that and we're still growing and learning from that experience.
Yeah.
So it's important to take time to do that and realize that even those trials sometimes can be gifts.
Yep. It's not always easy, but it's something we constantly remind ourselves of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you just deal with the trauma of it and process that and learn new skills from it and then take those skills with you to the next thing.
Yeah, that's good.